Every spring, same story. New seeds, new seedlings, new soil, new effort. You pour a whole season into that container. Winter hits. It's gone. Dead. Empty pot staring back at you. Spring comes around. You're back at zero. Again. But what if some of your containers never had to do that again? What if you planted once, and instead of dying, it came back stronger, bigger, fuller, feeding you more, for less work, every single year? That's not a fantasy. That's a perennial vegetable. Instead of racing to finish in one season, it builds a root system underground that gets stronger with time. Some of these plants will feed you for 15, 20, even 25 years from one planting. Ever bite into a leaf and taste pure lemon? No lemon involved. That's sorrel. Before lemons sat in every kitchen, cooks used sorrel to brighten soups, wake up salads, and cut through rich dishes. Here's what makes it a container all-star. Sorrel wakes up early. While your other pots are still empty, sorrel's already pushing up fresh green leaves, often the first harvest of the season. Harvesting is dead simple. Don't pull the plant. Take the outer leaves. Let the center keep growing. A few days later, ready again. Sorrel handles partial shade. A medium container keeps it producing for years. Low maintenance, nutrient dense, and it just keeps showing up, season after season, asking nothing. If sorrel proves flavor doesn't need to be fussy, the next plant proves even beginners can grow something they'll never replant. This one won't win a beauty contest, no giant blooms, nothing that stops your scroll. But garlic chives earned this spot for one reason: persistence. Plant it once. Roots settle in. Winter fades. Days warm up. Green blades push through again. No reseeding. No new plants. No starting over. You just walk outside and cut. Here's the strange part. Garlic chives seem to enjoy being cut. Chop it back, and instead of weakening, it sends up more growth. That can repeat multiple times a season. One mature pot keeps a household in garlicky leaves for months. It's forgiving, too. Cool spring snaps, summer heat, most pests. Doesn't care. Happy in a pot as small as 10 to 12 inches. Late season, it throws little white flower clusters. Completely edible. Sprinkle them on a salad for a soft garlic note, and pollinators love them. Garlic chives will never be the star of the garden. But a few years in, it's often the last container still producing while everything else needs replanting. And speaking of self-sufficient onions, the next plant doesn't just come back every year. It multiplies on its own, clump by clump, without you lifting a finger. Old line among gardeners, still buying green onions from the store? You've probably never grown Welsh onions. A regular onion finishes the moment you pull it. Welsh onion barely stops. You don't grow it to harvest once. You grow it to keep coming back to the same pot, again and again. Here's the difference. It doesn't grow as a single stalk. One small clump slowly divides into many shoots. Every year, the clump gets bigger, thicker, more onions, without planting a single new seed. The garden expands its own output. You just let it. For container growers, that's huge. One medium pot supplies fresh green onion for soups, omelets, noodles, salads, anything that wants a hit of allium. And it asks for almost nothing. No special pruning, no babying. Forget to water it for a few days? It doesn't care. It just sits there, multiplying, waiting for you to cut what you need. That's why Welsh onions have stuck around in gardens across Asia and Europe for centuries. Not flashy, just reliable. And if Welsh onion impresses you with how little it asks for, the next plant does something even stranger. It turns a one-season annual into something that lives for years. Most gardeners treat peppers like a one-and-done deal. Plant in spring, harvest through summer, let frost kill it, start over next year. But here's what most people don't realize. Pepper plants aren't actually annuals. In their native climate, they're perennial shrubs. We only treat them as one-season crops because most of us live somewhere too cold for them to survive winter outdoors. In a container, that changes everything. Bring the plant indoors before the first frost. Give it a proper dormant rest over winter. Same plant, second season, often a third. And the payoff isn't just convenience. An established plant skips weeks of germinating and building leaf structure from scratch. It comes into spring with a head start. Earlier harvest, bigger harvest, because the plant's energy goes straight into fruit instead of foundation building. That's a real shift in mindset. Instead of buying new pepper seedlings every spring, you're just waking the same plant back up, potentially for years. And if overwintering peppers proves you can stretch an annual further than you thought, the next plant doesn't just survive year to year. It quietly relocates itself around your garden, one bulb at a time. Picture this. You step outside one morning, look at last year's onion pot, and something's off. The onions aren't where you left them. A few popped up right beside the container, a few more further out. Almost like they walked there. They kind of did. Instead of seeds at the top of the stalk, Egyptian walking onions grow small bulb clusters up top. As they get heavier, the stem bends over. The cluster touches soil, takes root. A brand new plant. Do that year after year, and the whole patch walks across your garden. It's one of the lowest maintenance perennial alliums you can grow in containers. Tolerates cold. Ignore pests. Once established, it runs itself. And you get 2 harvests from one plant. Green tops work like scallions. Underground bulbs work like a regular onion. Some gardeners have kept the same patch of walking onions going for decades. New generations sprouting from the last. On and on, with almost no input from the person growing them. And if walking onion surprises you with how much it does on its own, the next plant rewards something completely different. Patience. Slow out of the gate. But what it becomes after a few years is worth the wait. Honest truth about gardening. The plants that give you the most make you wait the longest. Rhubarb is the perfect example. Expecting a harvest a few weeks after planting? Wrong plant. Year 1 is underwhelming. Slow growth. You'll be checking the pot daily, wondering what you did wrong. You didn't. Like most perennials on this list, rhubarb spends year 1 building roots, not putting on a show. Then year 2 hits. Everything changes. Thick, plump red shoots push up and unfurl into enormous leaves. Every year after, the clump gets bigger, the stalks get thicker, the harvest gets more generous. Some gardeners joke you're not planting rhubarb for this year. You're planting it for 5 years from now. One critical note, only the stalks are edible. The leaves are high in oxalic acid. Never eat them. Every rhubarb grower needs to know that from day 1. Once established, rhubarb asks for almost nothing. A large container, decent soil, good sun, and time. In return, you get a plant that can outlast you. Some rhubarb patches are still produced after 3 generations of the same family. And if rhubarb teaches patience, the next plant rewards it with something visually stunning. A vegetable so dramatic-looking, people grow it as a flower without realizing it's dinner. One place most vegetables refuse to grow, right on the coast. Salty air, brutal wind, poor sandy soil, relentless sun. Most crops give up fast. Sea kale doesn't just tolerate it. For thousands of years, it's grown wild on the rocky shorelines of Europe, thriving in exactly the conditions that would wreck almost anything else. And toughness is only half the story. Early spring, it sends up tender young shoots. Many compare them to asparagus, genuinely some of the best-tasting harvest on this list. As the season goes on, broad blue-green leaves develop. Cook them like kale or collards. Later, even the flower buds are edible. One plant, 3 separate harvests, 1 season. There's a classic trick coastal and container gardeners have used for generations. Force sea kale under a covering pot in early spring for extra tender, blanched shoots. An earlier, sweeter harvest, long before container gardening was even a phrase. The visual payoff is real too. Silvery blue-green leaves that already look ornamental. Once it flowers, clusters of small white blooms that could pass for a purely decorative plant. Sea kale doesn't choose between beautiful and useful. It does both. No replanting, no restarting each spring. It rests through winter and wakes up stronger. And if sea kale impresses you with what it can survive, the next plant impresses the opposite way. Not toughness, what's secretly multiplying underground, waiting for harvest day. Rule worth remembering in gardening: never judge a harvest by what you see above the soil. No plant on this list proves that better than Jerusalem Artichoke. All summer, it looks like nothing special. tall stems, green leaves, late-season bursts of bright yellow flowers that make the container look more like a sunflower patch than a vegetable garden. Judge it by what's above ground, and you'd have no idea what's coming. Then harvest day arrives. The first shovel of soil turns over, and that's when most new growers do a double take. Underneath each plant isn't a tuber or two, it's a whole cluster. Dig more, there's more. Keep digging, still more. It doesn't feel like harvesting a vegetable. It feels like finding buried treasure your own garden's been sitting on all season. There's a real upside to growing it in a container. Jerusalem Artichoke is famously vigorous, some would say aggressive, in open ground. The real challenge isn't keeping it alive, it's keeping it contained. A pot solves that completely, and makes harvest easier. Tip the container over, and most of the crop is right there. Tolerates cold, shrugs off pests, comes back with fresh energy every spring. One of the lowest effort, highest reward plants you can grow. And if Jerusalem Artichoke surprised you with what's hiding underground, the next plant is just as dramatic. Except this time, the surprise happens in plain sight, right above the soil. Some plants stop you in your tracks before you even think about eating them. Globe Artichoke is one of them. Big, silvery green leaves, a bold, dramatic shape. Right at the center, a huge flower bud that looks less like food, more like something sculpted. Never seen one before? You'd assume it's purely ornamental. Here's the twist. You have to harvest it before the most beautiful moment happens. Cut it while the bud's still tightly closed. That's dinner. Wait a few more days, and that same bud bursts into a striking purple flower. No longer a vegetable, now one of the showiest blooms in the garden. A lot of growers split the difference. Harvest a few buds for the kitchen, let the rest bloom for the bees. Globe Artichoke needs a genuinely large container to reach full size and productivity. Not a windowsill plant. It wants room to build that root system. And that root system is exactly what earns it the #2 spot. Once established, it survives winter underground, comes back each spring stronger and more productive than the year before. Often more buds with every passing season. Fairly drought-tolerant too. Once rooted, those silvery leaves handle hot, dry stretches better than most vegetables. You end up with a plant that's ornamental, edible, and genuinely long-lived. The kind of container that gets visitors asking about your flowers, right before you tell them it's dinner. And now, for the plant that started this whole list. The one vegetable that more than any other represents exactly what plant once, harvest for years really means. If one plant could completely change how you think about gardening, it's this one. Not because it's the fastest, not because it's the easiest. If anything, asparagus is the opposite, the plant that tests your patience more than any other on this list. It doesn't rush, doesn't try to impress you in year one. Instead, it spends its early years doing something you can't even see, building a massive root system underground, spear by spear, season by season. It's less like planting a vegetable, more like pouring a foundation. You won't see the payoff right away. But everything that comes later depends on what's happening beneath the soil right now. Getting that foundation right comes down to depth. Asparagus crowns need to be planted deep, then gradually backfilled as shoots grow, giving the root system room to establish properly. Get that part right, and the plant rewards you for decades. Because once it's mature, the payoff is dramatic. Every spring, while other containers sit quiet, thick asparagus spears push straight up out of the soil, fast enough to watch the difference day to day. Cut one, another's already on its way behind it. For several weeks, the same patch just keeps giving. One thing every new grower has to learn: once harvest season ends, you stop cutting. The remaining spears grow into soft, fern-like foliage. Not wasted time, the plant recharging, sending energy back to the roots to fund next year's harvest. Skip that step, weaken the plant, respect it, and some asparagus crowns keep producing for 15, 20, even 25 years from a single planting. That's the real reason asparagus takes the #1 spot. Not because it's the most famous vegetable on this list, because it's the purest example of everything this video has been about. Plant once, wait, and let your garden become more valuable every single spring than it was the year before. So there you have it. 10 container vegetables you plant once and harvest for years, sometimes decades. Some multiply on their own, like walking onions. Some make you wait, then reward that patience tenfold, like rhubarb and asparagus. Some hide their best surprise underground, like Jerusalem Artichoke. Some just quietly show up every spring, asking almost nothing in return. What I love most about this style of gardening isn't just the food, it's the mindset shift. Instead of starting from zero every season, you're building something. A garden that gets stronger, fuller, more productive every year, instead of resetting to empty pots every winter. That's the real difference between a garden that feeds you this year and one that keeps paying you back for the next 10. If this helped you rethink what's possible in your containers, hit like, subscribe to the Green Haven Farm so you don't miss what's coming next. Every week, I'm sharing practical, no-nonsense gardening tips to help you grow more, work less, and build a garden that lasts. See you in the next one.